Jenny Ervine, the co-founder of Race Ventures, an experienced early-stage investor and advisor with a passion for marketing and business strategy. Jenny is a force of nature in the early-stage tech sector and is the ultimate go-to person for building foundations that last with investors and customers so they can grow and scale. Not only that, but Jenny has a story that will inspire any entrepreneur to get out of bed every morning to make their dreams come true. This is the Mary Poppins of Startups podcast, the Angel Investor series. And, well, let the show begin.
If you were to speak to a startup that have not knocked on your door just yet, but they really want to come in and find you as an angel investor, what are the three things that you would like them to do before they get to you?
I think, make the leap and make the connection. It's not as scary. There's lots of really good support and advisors out there. That's the first thing. And it doesn't take long to have a 30-minute coffee. It might be a fantastic conversation, you get lots out of it, or it might be, well, you need to think of a few things before you take it to the next stage. But, it's very rarely that's a crazy idea stop. We're very much about encouraging entrepreneurship and very much about encouraging startups to go on the journey and make mistakes and learn and ask for advice. I think the first thing is reach out. The second thing is be prepared. As we talked about earlier, it's maybe not an overnight success. This can be a 5 or 7 year journey possibly as a startup, and you grow and scale and look for that potential exit. So know that it's going to be a journey. It's a marathon and it's not a sprint. And then the third thing is really just understanding this fantastic idea, where it fits in the market and how you're going to make money from it, because there's a lot of time and money and resources go into these, particularly into tech startups, and they take a lot of time to polish and scale and start to generate revenue out of. So I suppose it's be well prepared, do the market research and understand where you think you're going. And there might be changes on that journey, but have a vision of where you think this business is going to go.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. So for any startup listening right now, yes, do get in touch and just knock on doors, and also make sure you have a very clear vision. And I hope that if you have any more questions on this topic, do come and find me, #AthenaLeaders, and also find Race Ventures. You can find Jenny and Race Ventures on Twitter and many social media out there. Jenny, so you have 10 years and 10 plus years in terms of the investment world, working with startups, investing as an angel investor, and also running an accelerator now with Race Ventures. I believe that when you invest in some companies, you sometimes also take a role as a board member. I've heard so many startups that either really love their board members or some of them really hate it. What, in your opinion, is the secret to creating a really good relationship with a board member?
I guess, you've got both angel investors that would be board members and kind of non-exec advisors that may not be angel investors. So we'll kind of look at both. My view from a kind of angel perspective view is I would be looking at startups that I understand the industry that they're going into and the problem that they're solving. I come from a commercial marketing background, and if I've experienced the problem that the startups are kind of looking to solve, or I can see that there's a real kind of need for their solution in the market, and I really like the team, I buy into team and products and market opportunity. And at that point, I always think, well, you've got this commercial knowledge and commercial expertise from jobs in the past and most recently working with lots of different startups. Can we kind of bring all that expertise to a board, to the startup, and just kind of put in real objectives, real actionable targets that kind of keep the startup on track? And I think that's probably why I'd be looking to take some board seats in the startups that we invest into, because it's not passive money. You want to bring kind of actionable accountability to the founder, and I think that's benefit to the founder, because cash and runway can run out fairly quickly if they're not kind of kept on track. And the second piece is I suppose it's more of a sounding board as well, and the independence of, I think I might do this, what do you think? Or I need help with this, where can you sit down and just work through this problem. That could be a commercial problem, it could be a governance problem, it could be a customer problem, and just kind of workshopping it out. And I think that's some of the value that why angel investors want to get involved. They want to pay it forward. They want to take some of their knowledge and the learnings and kind of make an easier road for the startups coming behind. And then from an advisory perspective, the same tends to happen as people who've been in industry, they've built up a massive amount of knowledge and expertise, and maybe looking to spend a bit less time maybe in the larger corporate or scale-up world, and again want to help use that knowledge and put it to practice with smaller up-and-coming companies. So the advisors would come in specific topics, as we mentioned earlier, tech advisory or finance or sales, looking for those advisors at a particular time to say, right, come and just kind of test the edges of this. Are we doing the right thing? Does it all sound and look what it should look like? And how can we, what do we not know? How can we add value to this from an advisory perspective? And I think that's why advisors want to get on board. They've got expertise that they want to help the company with. And sometimes those can be paid or unpaid roles or sweat equity roles, which are slightly different to the kind of angel investor investing money and maybe taking a board seat. But both are very, very valuable. And it's important to have both on a board, because then you've got representation and independence from shareholders and investors, your executive directors, which is essentially your founder or co-founding team, and then your non-executive advisors. So it's important to try and have a mix.
Yeah. And I guess from what I'm hearing, it's also very important that when, as a startup going out looking for investors, they should also take that bit into consideration. So it's not just the money that you are looking for, but also if you want someone who's more active so that you can benefit from the wide range of expertise that the investors will have.
Yeah, very much so. You know, there's good money out there and passive money. There's when thinking about investment rounds, what are you looking for? And trying to bring that investment round together from lead angel investors that maybe want to take a more active role, combined with passive investors that maybe want to come in and be just a supportive money role, combined with potentially fund money. Where do they sit in the network around the board? Do they just want to be a board observer, or do they have expertise that they can bring to the table? And I guess layering on top of that, all those different board members have experience, and that could be industry experience in your startup industry. So they have connections. So it could be customer connections to open doors to get first couple of contracts, or it could be connections to other kind of angel networks or other fund networks, or it could be connections into service providers. You know, they're thinking about a marketing campaign and a marketing agency who's best to work with, who the maybe investors worked with before, bringing in that best practice, that know what these startups need, know how to position them and know how to present them in the best way. So the connections is very important as well, and just being open to the right type of investor, and it can be hard to say no to, you know, money, particularly when you're up against the wall. But we've one particular startup that's more focused on diversity and inclusion, and they're very much focused on having a balanced board, a board that is diverse and inclusive. And so therefore, if, for example, 4 males or even 4 females came in as investors, they would be saying, no, it needs to be diverse and inclusive. So, I mean, having your values and your vision as a startup as to who you're looking for as an investor is really important, and waiting for the right type of investor is important.
So it's pretty much it's similar to kind of what we said earlier when we were talking about the kind of the teams and who you will invest in. You have different types of people, the different types of energy that you get from within the founding team. You also need to plan that in a way when you are going out there to look for the investors, so that when you get your full set of investors and board members, then you do get the need and the support that is missing in your company.
Yeah, you know, I think the way we're talking about building the team, keeping an eye on your network from a team perspective, keeping an eye on your network from an advisory perspective is so important, and who can stretch, the board to the next level, maybe from a strategy perspective or future views perspective, and give challenge to the team and saying, right, well, you're on this track today and it's going to get you so far, but what else is coming down the road? How else can we grow the team? How else can we grow the business? The market opportunity in terms of looking beyond the UK into Europe, into America, and really kind of thinking, right, well, if we talked about this in one of our workshops a couple of weeks ago, if you want to, launch into America as on your roadmap as a vision in 3 years' time, you need to start thinking about it today and how you're going to get there. Because America's, 51 different states, which is actually 50 nearly different countries, and even launching into Europe's the same, of recognizing that putting that on the roadmap as a target. How do you start working towards that, even from a different language, different culture, and building a team and an advisory board that can help you on that journey, and just keeping strategy kind of front and center of the startup as much as possible.
And I guess for first-time founders, this is something that they might struggle with. This idea of the strategy, long-term strategy. As you said, if you want to launch in another country, in another continent, then you need to bear in mind years in advance what your strategy is going to be. Have you ever worked with startups where you're on the board members and you're getting increasingly frustrated with the leadership team?
Yeah, I think, they're not meant to be comfortable conversations. You're not really meant to be friends around the board table. And I think it's really important to have those difficult conversations. One of the things that we've been working hard on over the last couple of years is actually preparing. So preparing some thoughts around what does the board want to achieve at that meeting, that monthly meeting, that quarterly meeting, and working back. So is there information that's going to need to be collated? It could be a one-pager. This is what's happening, and here's kind of the options, so that the information is provided to the board members beforehand, so that they have the knowledge of what's going on and can start thinking about the decision piece. And then also having pre-conversations with board members. So before that board meeting, sitting down and going, right, well, you've received this one pager. Here's what's happening. Here's what the options. What do you think? Maybe sense checking around the table what people think beforehand. So when you come into the meeting, you have a vibe if everybody's on the same page, or if there needs to be some discussion and bringing people together. And that's also quite important, if you can, to have a chair to manage those conversations, or somebody whose role it is to try and bring the conversation to a conclusion and to an action. So yes, I've certainly been at meetings which are frustrating, but learning from those and walking away and thinking, what can we do better for the next meeting is really important. And to be honest, board members shouldn't be around for too long. In the big corporate world, it would normally be maybe 3 or 5 years, and always just kind of checking in a year before those 3 years is up. Is the board member still interested in being part of the journey? Yes or no? What does that look like? Are they still happy? Are they still adding value? Are they still receiving value? I think managing the board is really, really important, and it becomes a job in itself. But if you've got that cohesion and got that collaboration, you get much better decisions and much more easier conversations.
Yeah, definitely. It's really about managing expectations, setting things up the right way, and even the meetings are not afterthoughts that you just send an email there and says we meet on that date. There's a whole set of preparation that can help to just ease the meeting. And as you've nicely put it, there are some difficult conversation, uncomfortable conversation that needs to happen, and at the end of the day, it's for the good of the organization.
Yeah. And I think as a founder, it's important to have that board for a support, but also for challenge and difficult conversations, because it can be a lonely journey otherwise.
Yeah. But there are times, though, where board members step in a little bit stronger in terms of decision making for the company. And this is something that some people have asked me before, but also I experienced in one of the companies I worked in, where the board stepped in to specify who they should hire in some instances, and other instances there was a lot of frustration because the projects were not going to an end. There was no updates. They were spending a lot of money, but they could not see exactly what are we doing. Are we ready to launch the clients or not? So in this situation, what is there anything that you've experienced like that or have seen before, and how you can advise the startup founders in those kind of tense situations?
I think, we have shareholder agreements and articles of association for a reason, and they're nearly like an insurance policy. So if you're saying a board's overstepping the mark and making decisions when they shouldn't be, I think in those articles and those kind of shareholder agreements, it should be said that the operational team have a certain capacity to make certain amount of decisions, and over and beyond that, there's board decisions, and over beyond that, bigger like exit decisions or shareholder decisions, and just making sure it's really clear in black and white who has the power to make what decisions. And if they're overstepping the mark in terms of hiring, it's really down to the executive team to be saying, like, no, we know the business inside out, we know the type of team members that we need to be recruiting, and the board needs to take a step back. So I think kind of having some good governance down in black and white that you can refer to, here's the kind of parameters of where the decision making lies, and being able to point to those makes it a lot easier to have the difficult conversation and say, look, no, we have the good governance here and the capacity to make these operational decisions, as a board will come back, and these are the type of decisions we need to make are strategic, and as shareholders they're big exit decisions or shareholding decisions that need to be made. So I think, getting that down in black and white and giving the power to the executive team to be able to push back a bit.
Yes. And I'm glad you mentioned the word governance a few times, because we were already talking about the expectations earlier in this conversation, and now you bring in governance. One of the things that a lot of people talk about when they look at startups or small company is the freedom that you have to operate. Yet within that freedom, there still needs to have some element of structure and a little bit of structure to manage how the work is going, the relationship with the investors, the executive team, and the rest of the team. And I guess in this instance as well, it's really important to have the right structure and the right governance set up in the relationship to make sure that people know what to expect, and in terms of behaviors, and also having the guts to push back if there's a feeling that a board member might have overstepped the mark, which can kind of be scary because that's where the people who gave you the money, right?
Yeah, and I suppose it completely depends on the project. I suppose, for example, in the economic market that we had with COVID, a lot of boards were very hands-on because they kind of weren't sure what was going to happen, and there was more of a supportive role, and the guidance was really definitely needed throughout the COVID challenges. Now we're coming out of that. It's now a chance for maybe a reset and kind of, right, well, what is the strategy, and being able to plan a bit further ahead, and actually taking the board to more of a strategic level than an operations or hands-on level. And I think just managing those conversations and being really prepared to, I think if it's transparent, if the executive team and the founder and the employees, as they build them, have good processes in place to be transparent, like, this is what we're doing, this is the product we're building, this is the sales we're making, these are the hires that we're making. If the board can see that as an operational update, and there'll be a few questions that come out of having problems with this or problems with that can be brought to board just maybe as a sense check, but then moving operations to one side is maybe work on that for half an hour, 45 minutes in a meeting, and then thinking about the longer term strategy. And that could be anything to product roadmap, to growing the team, to thinking about future investment, and actually getting real support from the board to longer term strategy. That's really important.
Yeah. And when it comes to that balance in terms of the long-term strategy and the operation, is there any, have you ever worked with someone and you needed to kind of support them a little bit to help them to let go with the day-to-day and also understand a bit more on the strategy. And the reason why I asked that is that one thing I've noticed a lot, and a lot of questions I get from technical founders, is that they start to feel a lot more uneasy as they're leaving code behind to jump on more on the role of the CEO, and it takes a really long adjustment period. And for those who are non-technical, there are certain areas of their work that they absolutely love, they're passionate about, and they also struggle to kind of detach from the day-to-day monitoring of what's going on to start wearing that hat of at a strategic level. So how do you help or work with startup founders that fit in those criteria?
Yeah, I suppose there's one thing I was reading a while back about the delegation piece. And, yes, it can be very, very hard to start to hand over parts of your role and delegate that. But I think if the conversation is well managed, so what does delegation mean? If you are a software developer and you maybe up to CEO and you're passing the code over to somebody else, are they allowed to go away, code, and release something and then come back and say it's done? Or is it, putting on a staging server reviewed by everybody, sense checked, and then it's allowed to go? So having the parameters into place as to what they're allowed to do and when. So the majority of the work's still getting done, but there's a sense check by the larger or senior team. It might even be one person. The CEO is just sense checking and being able to sign off. So understanding the delegation task, and even in the commercial side of the room, if the founder's doing all the sales calls for now and all the demos for now, passing that over, writing a playbook, here's how I think a demo should be run, and letting somebody take that on, running the demos, maybe sitting beside them for a while, and over a period of time, stepping back and just having oversight in terms of numbers of demos being done and quality of demos. And I guess it's a period of time, and that's one thing I think is really interesting to consider when they raise investment, because it can be quite a substantial amount of money that they raise, and they have quite a few roles that they can start to fill. Maybe not fill them all at once, because you're delegating, as you said, the CTO or coding role, or you're delegating the sales role. You can't delegate both at the same time. You really need to sit beside them for a month or two, train them up, and be happy that there's a process there before you step back. So a bit of a staggered onboarding from a recruitment perspective can really help in a delegation piece. And I think that would help founders get over that worry that you're talking about. And I do this job and I love this job, I don't want to give it over to anybody else. But I think they have to. And I suppose to the other side of the coin, it's up to the board. They and maybe the CEO, if they are such a passionate CTO or an operations, maybe they need to think about hiring a CEO. And as well, as the company grows, maybe they're not the right person for a CEO, and that can be a hard conversation to have. But it's probably not right now for the early stage people, but it's something to be thinking about as they grow and scale, and thinking about in that investment journey. Are they the right person to be the CEO? And that's okay if it's not.
Yeah. Thanks so much for this. I think there were so many great things that you've said there, and as you were talking, I'm already thinking when we once we put this episode out live, we are going to share with so many startups out there. As you've mentioned, it might be the right person to do the CEO role. Being a founder, of course, you're CEO when you begin, but as the company grows, there is still a place for you in the company. So how can you transition to where you're best suited? And also just this awareness of delegation, how important delegation is, which is very difficult for people who have been sleeping and waking up and showering with their baby, which is their company, or for a couple of years or more, to then having to hands on to someone else who might not do it exactly the way as I would have done it. So there's definitely plenty that you've shared with us, and thanks for that. When it comes to work with board members, and to just kind of shift a little bit the perception of board members and the best way of managing expectation, setting the governance in place, and thinking about the right now and the strategical piece when it comes to board members. So if you were speaking to a startup right now and they're out there, they are just about to sign their first check and they're really excited about it, what is the one or two things that they should do as soon as they've got board members on board?
Yeah, I think it's really important to set the process up as soon as possible. Get the meetings in the diary, understand who's going to be on that board. It might be an investor, it might be an advisor, and set the kind of agendas as to what you want to achieve through those board meetings, and really limit it to maybe 2 or 3 actions, because in 2 or 3 hours, that's an hour per action to really get good discussion around the table and come to a conclusion. So, if you sign that first check and looking to bring that investor onto your board, it's really important to get good processes set up straight away, but also continue to evolve that board and be, asking if they want to be involved, if you want them to be involved, and who else needs to be on this board as you grow, and that can change over time, particularly as the company grows and scales. So yeah, fantastic. Got investment, get your board set up, but it's an ever-changing piece of work. And as you said, just keep good governance and keep everybody informed and have good communication. And one of the other tips I would say is it doesn't always have to be formal board meetings. Maybe get together informally before or after the board and get to know each other. Yes, I said earlier, you don't need to be friends, but it's good to build the relationships across the table.
Yes, I agree. And one of the things, for full disclosure, for those who don't know, Jenny is an investor in one of the startups I'm also working for. So that's quite exciting. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is having a pizza and working with you and my clients together and on the growth of what we're building. So again, it's kind of how you mix the informal and the formal all together just to have a bit of a different atmosphere. And we are definitely very grateful for what you bring to the team in terms of the knowledge as a board member and also as an investor.